He's editor-in-chief of Breitbart News and a New York Times best-selling author. And on this podcast, he brings deep research, prescient analysis, and world-class guests. He's Alex Marlow, and this is the Alex Marlow Show.
All right, an early Happy New Year to everyone. The last show of 2024. What a year it was. I was thinking about what are the biggest stories of the year, and you know, you got to go with Donald Trump winning the presidency, right? So that makes 2025 the biggest story is going to be how he gets going here, and that's why we're all so excited here on the Alex Marlow Show and at Breitbart News, and I'm sure my colleagues at Salem as well, though I haven't asked them about their anticipation about how this could be a historic year coming up, and I'm really excited that I'm going to broadcast with you guys every single weekday and maybe beyond. Maybe we'll add some weekend shows. I kind of have a fantasy of doing a Sunday thing. Some people have been known to do that in the podcasting space. That seems like a good plan. Maybe we'll work on that in the new year. I will do New Year's resolutions on the next show, which will be on the 2nd. In all likelihood, we will do a show on the 2nd. And you should send them in, aloha@alexmarlow.com. I'm going to give you some of mine. Some of them I think are serious and are things that I think you all could benefit from. And some of them will be somewhat silly, but also somewhat serious, like how I've got to get my hair in order. I'm just giving you a tease in there that my hair is not in order. It's not organized. See, I having to be on camera every day. Haven't figured out how to get the hair in the right spot consistently for the heavy broadcasting schedule I'm doing. And so that is one of my absolute New Year's resolutions. Stuff matters this day and age. So we'll be doing that later in the week. So send in anything you've got, aloha@alexmarlow.com. You guys are emailing me beautiful things. I'll read a few of them at the end of the show, react to a few. Big reaction to yesterday's show, if you missed it, where I did probably the most comprehensive breakdown you're going to get of the evil of the H-1B system. Yes, and it is evil what we have going. I'll comment more on that in a bit. But I do want to reflect on what an incredible year it was. A long year for me on a personal level. I touched on this a little bit in earlier shows. It felt like sort of a 24/7 work year, as presidential election years are for those of us in my line of work, not just in the news media, but in the political element, the political side of the news media. But it really is important to reflect on some of the big sea changes that we saw so that we know what to build off of for next year. I thought that, first of all, the rise of Trump, the greatest comeback since Jesus Christ himself rose from the dead. And I'm only being somewhat tongue-in-cheek when I say that. It does provide not just a great opportunity going forward, but it means that we vanquished a lot of foes, or we're in the process of really finishing them off as cultural forces, in particular the establishment media, something I wrote my first book about, breaking the news, and what I wrote my second book about, the Biden family, where Joe Biden is going to ride off into the sunset as a sadly pretty effective politician, but one that's a bad politician and someone who will have a negative legacy and has no heir. He will not pass on anything to anyone of significance, and he will not have the enduring cultural impact, I don't think, as the Clinton family has had, unfortunately, and as the Obama family has and will continue to have. And that's a big thing, because he's been a force for immeasurable amounts of ill in this country, and so is his family members. And that's why it's important that if I have anything to say about it, President Trump will spend at least a little bit of time investigating the Biden family, the brothers, Frank and James, who were not as bad as Hunter, but it's certainly in the same realm, and make sure that people who try to take advantage of this country have a price to pay. And it's not being vindictive. It's about having pride in our system, and not allowing for the most nefarious among us to thrive, while normal people get insulted by our political leaders as doing too many sleepovers and not caring about education. So more on that momentarily. So big stuff. But I do think what I was asked by my friend Grant Stinchfield, who's on Real America's Voice, what I thought were the biggest stories. And I thought number 1 and 2 easily were Trump surviving the assassination attempt and Joe Biden's debate performance, which for me was a big moment, because I'd always believed Biden was of declining mental health. I'm always shocked when people acted like it wasn't a charade, that he was mentally incapacitated. I just saw a CBS News journalist who got a lot of attention earlier in the week saying that the most underreported 2024 story was Biden's obvious mental decline. I don't know. It's, I guess, Jan Crawford was her name. I don't understand this. Like, who didn't know? This is where, can you guys please write in and tell me? Leave a comment on YouTube or Rumble. I'll read all of them. It's all easy ways to get to me. I don't understand it. Since when did we not know he was of declining mental capacity? I've done this before and I'll do it again. I'll read from the portion of Breaking Biden where I wrote about how absurd the reports were about Joe's mental health, that his only problems were sleep apnea and a stiff gait. That's all he had. I always thought when they would say stuff like that, it was so unbelievable. It was on purpose. They were just trolling. So, but he did such a bad job in that debate. He is, as a guy who is famous for not being able to tell the difference between his wife and his sister, who, is infamous for the corn pop story, the greatest moment in American political history at the Wilmington, Delaware pool. Look it up if you're not familiar. Missy, we got to use more corn pop audio in 2025. I'm adding that to my New Year's resolution list. More corn pop while we still have the opportunity. But that combined with the Trump surviving the assassination attempt in Butler, and you knew that not only Trump was going to win, but we were going to have a total paradigm shift in this country, where we were going to really see the establishment media, the establishment of the Democrat Party, and the establishment in Washington all have to really take a backseat to the people, the voice of the people, the will of the people. The fake news is really going to be on its last legs. And I think that's really terrific. The rise of the podcast culture, which we covered with Alex Bruzewitz in an interview a week or two ago. Those of you who are very easy to look up wherever you get your podcast. There's not many of these things, but definitely look that one up. And the solidification of the conservatives as the counterculture, as the rebels. This was Andrew Breitbart's vision. This is what Andrew wanted, is for us to be the ones ascendant in the culture and not just to have the political left be as dominant as they've been, where we're outsourcing American culture via music, via movies. And that's not as much the case anymore. A lot of our culture is politics, sadly. It's sort of reversed. Politics is now upstream of the culture in a lot of ways because Trump guides the politics. And now, Trump guides the culture in a lot of ways. You see the Trump dance in the end zone. Obviously, politics is upstream of culture in that case. But then we're seeing so many people getting their news and their entertainment from these podcasts that are politically neutral, if not favorable for Trump. They're certainly counterculture and open-minded, and they're not looking to go along to get along with the establishment entertainment corporations that have controlled what the world's view of Americana has been. So all of that is set in, it's locked in. People are understanding this in a big way, which is why you see so many people trying to scramble to get a piece of the new pie. I'm talking about the Don Lemones, not Don Lemones, the Van Joneses, Stephen A. Smiths, all these people, the Cenk Uygurs, like some of these guys who are part of the problem for a while, for the most part, politically, and they're now like, well, you know what? I kind of get it. I get the MAGA thing now. Okay, good, fine, come on board. Let's see what you got. We're going to be wary of you. We're going to be careful. But come on board. Water's warm over here. So the Democrats losing their strategic fastball was a major thing. The way they handled the entire Biden collapse, the fact that Biden was such a lousy candidate because he's the oldest candidate ever, he could barely talk, but he also had the Bidenflation. He had left the borders open intentionally. In fact, he'd reopened them. Trump had done a lot of good in his fourth year of his administration with Title 42, Remain in Mexico, those Northern Triangle agreements, and starting the wall. And Biden came in on day one, and he wanted to wipe all of it out on purpose. Wanted to open up our border. So when Biden comes in and undoes that, and then we see huge amounts of inflation, all from these vast spending packages that were unnecessary. Every last one that was unnecessary. We're already recovering. Cutting all these checks. Then it was clear he was going to lose in all likelihood. But what did they do? How did they deal with it? Well, first of all, they let him run a really long time. And then they slid in Kamala Harris, the least likable, least charismatic Democrat imaginable. Someone who's totally uninspiring. All the fake joy stuff, they couldn't run on a single issue. They didn't know one thing they stood for. It showed you that they've really lost their fastball. I'm not trying to underestimate them heading in to the next Trump administration. The resistance was quite effective, combined with the Republican establishment and the Paul Ryans of the world, who still maintain a lot of power in America. They were very effective at keeping Trump at bay in Trump's first administration. So I don't want to underestimate them early, but they really don't have much. And I think it was noteworthy to see Biden come out earlier in the week saying he regrets ending his reelection campaign and says he would have defeated Trump. Now, he wouldn't have defeated Trump. He would have lost after that debate. But he might have done better than Harris, who lost ground in almost every county in the country and lost every single swing state. He could have done better than she did. And I think that's why he was trying to hang in. A lot of people thought it was so crazy that I was saying he's going to be the nominee. It became very trendy a long time ago to say Biden wouldn't run again. And I never bought it. I always thought he would try to stick in there. And if it wasn't for that debate, he would have. He would have stuck in there to the very end. And we were all waiting for that moment, like the debate, for years. We thought, when is the moment that Biden's just going to light himself on fire? Is it going to be a State of the Union? Is it going to be some sort of major address? He had so many mediocre addresses over the years. But he never had that moment where he just blew himself up. And he finally did during the debate, so they had to let him go. But he regrets stepping down, he says. I don't think he does, though. I think that's him doing bravado and him asserting that he's better than Harris and better than the Nancy Pelosi's and Barack Obama's and all those people who tried to push him out, who did push him out and stalled Harris. He wants to maintain a certain level of superiority heading into his post-presidency. Try to set himself up for himself, his legacy, his family. I think that's what he's trying to do. But he really got more done than we'd like to admit. 235 judges appointed by Biden. How scary is that? Is Schumer acknowledging Biden's judge is going to be a bulwark against Trump? Like a quarter of the judges now have been appointed by Biden. Elections have consequences, ladies and gentlemen, and he was prone to get stuff done. I got to say, the stuff he chose to get done were terrible ideas, but underestimating Joe was a mistake, I think. And I think it's important to continue to tell the story of his legacy because it's going to be a bad legacy. It was funny, though, this week when he was confusing Jimmy Carter with his dad. He was telling a story about how Jimmy Carter said, Joey, a job's about a lot more than a paycheck. That's a story that he attributed to his dad 1 million times, but he attributed it to Jimmy Carter this week. It's pretty good. Over at the Breitbart Fight Club, I have a great conversation today with Joel Pollack. That's our Breitbart Confidential episode with the full history of Jimmy Carter, who really does seem like more traitorous the more you learn about him. Sorry, I'm just not feeling that charitable. He's 100 years old. He tormented us for so long. He's bad president, bad post-president. But he ushered in this culture where Democrats in particular, to a lesser degree, some establishment Republicans, but Democrats in particular, would go around the world and announce that America was kind of not a great place. He tried to encourage Israel to negotiate with Hamas. He basically came from the perspective that suicide bombers kind of had a point. I'm not saying he agreed with the point completely, but he was trying to listen to them and not treat them as crazy lunatic terrorists. I don't dig that. And Democrats have done that for a very long time. It really started with Carter. And Obama just escalated it in a major way. Clinton was like that to a lesser extent. Obama really escalated it with his apology tour that he did the second he was elected. And it continued a bit with Biden. But it's just walking around acting like America is just a so-so place relative to foreign cultures. That was Jimmy Carter's thing. And I think when people talk about what's going on in some corners of the conservative movement, it's again, conservatives are starting to do this now. Conservatives are walking around acting like America's not that great. So it's something we got to keep an eye on. It's a questioning some of the things that we've been told by the establishment is always very healthy and very good. But if it turns into this, Vivek Ramaswamy post we spent all day on yesterday, talking about how America's culture is mediocre, so we need to import Indian culture, that's not a great look either. And it's not really an accurate look. So, all right. So that's it. That's what Carter was all about. I'm not into Carter, but Biden attributed story to him about his dad. And I thought that was pretty rich. What are the other big stories? Am I missing anything big? Democrats losing their fastball, inflation, open border, podcast culture, MAGA crowd becoming the cool kids. Also ironic that we became the cool kids and now Ramaswamy is calling for the nerdification of MAGA. I didn't get to the end of his absurd piece yesterday because I thought I was just beating the dead horse, but he writes, a culture that once again prioritizes achievement over normalcy, excellence over mediocrity, nerdiness over conformity, hard work over laziness. I look at some of this stuff is universal. We always want to have hard work over laziness. And if we're working hard, try to work harder. All that stuff's great. Excellence over mediocrity. I agree with that. Nerdiness over conformity. I don't know what that even means. What's funny is that this whole argument of this piece is essentially the key to success in America is to make yourself competitive to work in a corporation and become a conformist, become a corporate stooge. That's the ultimate conformity. So nerdiness and conformity are sometimes one and the same when it comes to corporate America. So I don't know what his point is. But anyway, we finally got cool after all these decades. The conservatives became the cool kids. And we're like, no, we need to be nerds now. No, thanks. Folks, pay attention because this is as serious as it gets. Kamala Harris and Joe Biden are racing to lock in radical policies before Trump takes office in January. They're not just winding stuff down. They're cementing their control. Biden's already signed Executive Order 14067, and banks are actively testing a government-controlled digital dollar right now. You've heard me talk about this on the show. This isn't about modernizing currency. It's about total control. They want to track every dollar you earn, save, and spend, every single one. And here's the kicker. Once this system is fully implemented, it'll be nearly impossible for Trump to undo it. The radical left and their global elite allies will have a permanent grip on your financial life long after they're out of power. Trump's called this a dangerous threat to freedom, and J.D. Vance warns it could mean total government control over your finances. Folks, this is real and it's happening right now, but you're not powerless. That's why my friends at Priority Gold have created a free wealth preservation guide to help you fight back. It lays out 3 critical steps to shield your savings from this overreach. Text FREEDOM to 24999 right now to get your guide. That's FREEDOM to 24999 or visit PriorityGold.com. Don't wait. Text FREEDOM to 24999 today and shield what's yours. I'm fine with nerds. I surround myself with nerds more often than I'm surround myself with super cool people. But we need the cool factor. Let's try that for a while. Not throwing that out. Funny way to end the year. Was not anticipating that one. All right, but this is why we got to keep an eye, ladies and gentlemen, very important for us to keep an eye on the new MAGA, because how the new MAGA is going to fit in. I'm talking about the people who weren't around in 2016. I'm talking about the people who were not there, didn't understand Trump, weren't there for his victories in 2016, didn't stand by him in 2020 when he was going up against all odds, the Chinese-made pandemic, the hostility of the media, trying to be undercut by, he's trying to pull up the pharmaceutical industry by its bootstraps to get us a vaccine. And that was used against him by both sides. He really went through a lot. And if you'd abandoned Trump at some point, and then now you're there, great. Happy to be there, but we got to keep an eye on those folks. This is so good. Trump team has now ordered cabinet nominees to cease social media posts ahead of confirmation hearings. Now, why would that be? Did anything come up in the news that might suggest that maybe they should stop posting on socials for a little bit? Do you think perhaps it has to do with, I don't know, the mega viral Ramaswamy post that made no sense, 115 million views in the X platform? Yeah, the problem with X and Twitter and social media in general is I find, at least my personal experience, and I'm not a virtuoso on these platforms. We do very well at Breitbart. We have a huge Instagram. We have a very big Twitter. I have not made a ton of effort on these platforms over the years. I don't purport to understand them completely. But I will say that for me, when I write a great tweet and people share it, I find that my life improves not at all. But if you write a dumb tweet and people share it, then your life gets a lot worse. So Susie Wiles is old school, and she apparently doesn't like what's going on some of these platforms. They'll really disappoint Musk, though. So that's the real rift between Trump and Musk that could come up. It's not a rage one beast. I think they'll work that out. But I think what really could be what drives a wedge could be if his people aren't creating content on the X platform. Funny. I got a kick out of that. Musk, we reported at Breitbart News that Tesla replaced laid off Americans with foreign workers for H-1Bs. So it's just, look, he is a ruthless capitalist. I've heard him described as the greatest capitalist of all time. That is a important distinction. It is a distinction that is not a net negative. It's not a net negative. And if anything, maybe it's a net positive in my view. But overall, in order to get there, you're probably going to have the position that it's okay to lay off Americans and hire a bunch of foreigners at a cheaper rate without regard for American culture, American families, and American workers. If you're into hyper competition, then there is a level for certain people, and Musk seems to be among them, where that exceeds your national pride. America first is about Americans first. That's the mantra. We can call every show that for the rest of the year. You know why? Because this is the last show of the year. But he laid off approximately 15,000 U.S. workers in April, and a lot of the positions were filled with H-1B workers. So now you see why he yells at us on his X account. He's going to F us in the face. That's what he said. One other thing to track heading into the new year is other countries coming to heel, countries who are trying to be proactive to try to not get on Trump's radar for anything too severe that Trump could pull. Canada's promised to crack down student visa abuse after an Indian human smuggling group got charged. John Hayward wrote this up for us at Breitbart News. Canadian government pledged to crack down on student visa abuse after Indian officials complained about a well-planned conspiracy that used Canadian student visas to smuggle Indian nationals into the United States. According to India's Directorate of Enforcement, an umbrella agency that coordinates interdepartmental investigations of money laundering, a sophisticated criminal operation in India has been systematically abusing student visas to smuggle Indians into Canada. The criminals allegedly target 100 Canadian colleges and universities. I make the point about the Indians that I've made about people south of our border for so many years. If these systems in the United States and Canada, et cetera, are going to allow for black market industries to come up where you can monetize the abuse of our system, I understand why they're coming up. I'm not trying to evaluate them on a moral level. I'm certainly not evaluating them on a racial level. But what I'm saying is that we are enabling these things with our policies. If we have too many visas and we're not keeping an eye on them, then this will inevitably what takes place. That's exactly why if you leave the border open, inevitably cartels are going to start laundering things like drugs, humans, et cetera, up through our border. We're witnessing the same thing. It's not just illegal immigration. It's legal immigration that's being abused. I got to say, I admire something Steve Bannon said, which is he wants reparations now for H-1Bs. So he wants Americans to get paid more who had to lose their jobs to H-1Bs. And this is not just this wouldn't be just for white people. This would be for brown people and black people also, and Asians who had their jobs taken. So American-born whites, blacks, browns, Asians, Hispanics, et cetera, all owed money, reparations from H-1B abuse. I think that is quite clever. Got to admit. All right. Mexico is sending hundreds of lawyers to aid illegal migrants in the U.S. This is something we've been tracking at Breitbart. Neil Monroe and John Binder have been good on this. Warner Todd Houston's got a fresh article up for us on this. But Mexico is, I think, going to be largely cooperative with some of the deportations because Trump is wielding that sword of Damocles with the tariffs over their head. And they don't want to get tariffed because they import a lot of stuff in the United States and they don't want those tariffs. A lot of auto manufacturing just moved down there. And they know that Trump could come down pretty hard. So they're going to have to cooperate in certain ways including with the, not just the tariffs, but including with not just with illegal immigration, but with cracking down the cartels, et cetera. We're seeing some of the cartel crackdown take place. But Mexico now has an app that they've set up. They're sending up a bunch of lawyers. And they're going to be trying to help at least slow the stem of deportations because the tide is going to be big and it's going to take up a lot of time, a lot of resources. So it just shows you the scrambling is taking place. And this is where I do get it when people say Trump's already acting like the president, that this stuff is happening. He's not quite yet. Biden's still getting a lot of horrible stuff done, but it's pretty cool to see these actions taking place. Now, I don't love that there's going to be an app helping people avoid deportations or slow down deportations, but I like that those extreme measures are necessary now to try to stop the deportations. All right, Xi Jinping, who's anticipating the return of Trump in China, tells China to brace for challenges in a New Year's speech. Yeah, there's going to be China's having a tough time. It's another thing why when Ramaswamy says China's going to here's what he said: normalcy doesn't cut it in a hyper-competitive global market, and if we pretend like it does, we'll have our asses handed to us by China. I mean, that's just fear-mongering. China's struggling right now. I want to come in and tell you guys, because it's great content, that China's gonna eat our lunch. I've been saying stuff like that forever. It's not happening right now. China is having, they did not do well with coronavirus. They are not doing well in terms of their younger generations are not buying into the Communist Party vision. They don't want to participate in society. They're not having families. Their economy is not doing well. So now, is China our biggest global threat? Yes, of course. Are they ripping us off in a lot of ways? Yes, of course. Do we need to tariff the crap out of them? Yes, of course. All that stuff. But they're afraid of us right now. That's why we don't need to do the full fear-mongering mode. China's gonna kick our ass if we don't do something. Stop it. Francis Martel, brilliant lead sentence here. Genocidal Chinese dictator Xi Jinping urged his people to work together to steadily improve social understanding and governance, and celebrated his repressive regime as a source of stability amid global turbulence during his New Year's Eve address. Good stuff. Always read everything Francis writes, particularly on China. Bad news, though, the Treasury says that Chinese hackers remotely access several workstations and unclassified documents. We had this report. This is from Monday, so I won't dwell on this too much. 24 hours old as this show's coming out. So I encourage you to go to Breitbart for the latest. But what's happening is they're hacking third parties. And this is where when the government gets too sprawling, too out of control, and we're relying on third parties. So the government costs an insane amount, but we can't even maintain our own stuff, so then we need to outsource. And then the companies that we outsource to, if their security is not up to snuff, then they can get hijacked. These are also companies that are going out of their way to hire foreign workers. So they're not just hiring foreign workers, they're going out of their way to hire foreign workers to work at these third-party providers that we rely on for our security within our government. That's worthy of a deep interview. I got to find someone to talk about that. We should do that in the new year. Big deal. Big deal. So that's where that hack comes from. I predict is what we're going to figure it out. Yeah, another new one we're going to deal with in the new year. New Congress coming in I think the process begins Friday. So hitting the ground running here in 2025. Transgender trailblazer Sarah McBride, born a man, now cosplays as a woman, heads to her debut in Congress. And this is the AP's headline: hoping for a touch of grace. Okay? So that's what we're doing, is just the gender bending science confusion. We need to figure out the basics. We're not doing great on the basics right now. We're not doing good on mental health. We're not doing good on having families. We're not doing good in staying on top of our budget, keeping our border secured. But we're introducing all this chaos into normal American life. I just don't understand the rush for it unless you're a chaos agent, unless that's what you want. If you want to return to normalcy, then what is this stuff about? I would like a return to when men were men and women were women. But I got to be careful about this stuff because I don't want to get downgraded in the YouTube algorithm. The London Telegraph has got a story this week about how obsession with healthy eating can lead to addiction and mental illness. Switching to a clean diet following the excesses of Christmas may negatively affect the body and mind, warned an expert. A Wall Street Journal had an amazing story earlier in the year about how weight loss is actually is harder than rocket science. And clearly that's the case. We keep coming up with some newfangled approach. We're going to cut carbs. We're going to walk 10,000 steps a day. We're going to have 1 billion supplements. We're going to start drinking raw milk. All of these things are going to get us healthier. And then we talk about this stuff. Many people adopt it, and then we seem to get less healthy. Though I don't think the raw milk adoption's taken off completely. The new movement now is raw water. So for those of you who don't trust tap, there's raw water, the New York Times writes. So this is odd to me. I understand that we should be revisiting things, but, the fluoridated water has some advantages. Our teeth are a little stronger. But our whole system is designed to keep deadly bacteria and parasites out of our water. Get the toxins out. A lot of stuff in our water that gives cancer, harms brain development for kids. Like it's not entirely baseless. I'm not saying we can't revisit it, and Kennedy's the perfect guy to do it because Kennedy actually likes the scientific method. I have 100% confidence he will not implement anything that isn't backed up with studies. Actual legit studies, not pay-for-play studies. So I'm all for revisiting it, but I'm not sure about the raw water as a craze. It just doesn't seem realistic also. I think about what a miracle it is. We have such we have running water. I was working out in the garage yesterday, as I've been known to do. Master Marlow comes in, and he wants to have a dance party. And we do this sometimes because sometimes I burn out on the playlist on my exercise bike. We all do. Anyone knows the feeling. There's no exercise bike DJ who's that good that they have a fresh playlist every class. So Master Marlow wants to turn on some sort of music. So I get Crab Rave going. Look it up. Those of you with kids, Crab Rave, full endorsement, free plug on the show. So we're in there. He's hanging on my tricep dip bar. That's a good one, by the way, guys. It took me about 10 minutes to assemble. Great exercise to the tricep dip. And he's swinging on it like it's a monkey bar. And he notices the hot water tank. First time he's ever noticed this. And he asked me, what is that? And I said, that's our hot water tank. And then he says, well, what's in there? And I said, well, can you guess? And he said, hot water. And I said, yeah. So when you take a shower or a bath, it's just waiting for you, all heated up, ready to go in that tank. And he looked at me like it was a miracle, because it is a miracle that we have all this water in our house, clean and ready to bathe in, ready to drink. I throw the stuff through the Brita. I like the Brita. I like the filtered case. I'm not saying that it's the tap water is perfect. I get the hard water I'm at, so I should probably do the expensive thing where I treat it, which I haven't done yet. But we're going raw water here. There's a water bar now that's charging like $90, I think it is, if you want a glass of a melted iceberg. I like the clear ice. That's kind of cool. I've never done it, though. That seems like a splurge. I did look this up online, those of you who like a craft cocktail. They're charging $2 an ice cube, and I will tell you, I would consider it. I would consider it. Seems too excessive for now. But if I have a big 2025, you can count on me buying some ice cubes for $2 next year. All right, abrupt changing of gears because I will say something that I wish I had got to talk about this on the show yesterday some more, because I'm just fascinated with this plane that crashed in South Korea where the landing gear didn't work. But there's so much to this, because if you watch the horrific video, I know it's like a snuff film, but I couldn't resist watching it. I just can't. I can sometimes. I couldn't resist. So I watched this video, and the plane, it just drives straight into a wall. So even if you're making an emergency landing, wouldn't you pick a spot? If the landing gear is not coming out and you're trying to do a belly landing, we've all seen those. They work a lot. Pilots should be trained for them. And the guy just runs the plane right into a wall and everyone's dead. It's very bizarre. And I'm not saying it's not pilot error, or more likely there was some other malfunction that we don't know of yet. But I found that to be truly shocking, that he would land the plane in a way where he was going to skid into a wall. The thing was just going to explode like a giant, like a barrel of TNT. He could have circled around more, I thought, at least from the video. Slow down the plane. Maybe try to land on a freeway or somewhere, a highway. Get all that cleared off so that you could just skid in for as long as you can. So very strange. If anyone has any insight into that, I would love to hear it. aloha@alexmarlow.com. I'll read stuff on air. But I'm concerned about the planes. And this is where maybe Vivek's mediocrity push is key. A lot of these are American planes. A lot of them are Boeing. Sorry, they just are. But flights temporarily suspended at Halifax Airport after an airplane landing incident. Delta flight nearly crashes into Gonzaga University's basketball team. This was at LAX. This was very close to my house. One after the next. So we got to keep an eye on this stuff. There is a lot of mediocrity. I'm not saying that there wasn't a kernel of truth to Vivek's point. Got to keep ourselves fresh. Though this is a global thing, though. That's not just America, the planes. No one else is innovating with the planes, making the planes safer. But we can't take this stuff for granted. It is one of the most unbelievable things that we can just fly around the world at will in the safe way. Safest form of travel. That's another one I had to explain to Master Marlow about how planes are the safest way to travel, which is just unfathomable on just a purely logical basis to conclude that we go up in the air, we go 500 miles an hour, and that's safer than driving the car down the block. So we got to keep up that standard. That's a global thing. Maybe we can get a bunch of H-1Bs to fix it for us. All right. What else do I want to do? Okay. California, January 1. So we're going to start tracking new laws at Breitbart, things that are bad. California is going to ticket drivers who park near crosswalks. And you don't even have to have a posted sign to do this. So this is what they're doing in my neck of the woods. I flagged this partially to show that some people are not with the picture yet. They're not with the program, that the party of big government is not in. And Newsom is trying to position himself as the anti-Trump. So we got to look at that because he could be the guy in 2028. But California is going to begin ticketing drivers who park within 20 feet of pedestrian crosswalks, thanks to a law signed by Newsom. So you can't stop, stand, or park within 20 feet of a crosswalk. I got to tell you, some of the places where I pull over in one neighborhood where we hang out over weekends at Breitbart. That's how it feels some days. The Marlow family. Crosswalks everywhere. Like it's going to really cut into parking lots. So Happy New Year from Newsom. All right. Misty did pull something for me, though. That was pretty cool. So Newsom is going in the right direction on one issue, at least barely. Let's check this out.
I'm here to sort of reinvigorate that sense of optimism and possibility back into Oakland, but it starts foundationally with public safety. We're at an inflection point in terms of the state's support.
Calling on the city's police commission to allow OPD to engage in car chases if they want continued help from the state.
In return, that partnership requires that local change and local support.
Current OPD policy only allows officers to chase someone if the suspect committed a violent forcible crime or a crime with a firearm.
Someone that literally puts people's lives at risk, that occurs right in front of an officer in a vehicle. That officer cannot, under this extreme pursuit policy here in Oakland.
Okay, those of you watching, you see a big smile on my face because it's just this is great. Some of us have to live in these blue states. There's more Republicans in California than any other state. And I don't spend a lot of time in Oakland, but I have in the past. And if the rules are they're trying to protect the shoplifters, and so you can't have a car chase, it's going to deter more people if you feel like the strong arm of the law is going to come down on you. And if we can return to sense in some of these cities, it is a good thing. It would be much better for the country if we had two strong parties and not just sort of one strong party where we got lucky and Trump's leading it. So this is good. It's good. It's positive. So I don't get the mispronunciation of literally. Like I can't even do it. I'm supposed to be a professional talker, literally. Like why do people say it like that? Strange. I've been working on this in my personal life. It wasn't enough just to say literally. We have to add some sort of strange pronunciation. Odd. But anyway, he's running for president, guys, and he's going to do what it takes. And if he thinks that if he can help his numbers with reduction of crime in places like Oakland, he's going to talk about it. But the good news is that maybe it'll be safer to go to some of our major cities. So I congratulate him on that. I don't like the new crosswalk policy, though. It seems like a big waste of time handing out tickets for that. Keeping an eye on stuff for New Year's. State of emergency in Europe. European capitals bracing for New Year's Eve riots. New Year's Eve, very, very dangerous place. We just recall all of those mass rapes in Cologne in Germany a few years back. This caused a lot of problems for us at Breitbart because we were the first to report on them, and we reported accurately. And this is where we had that huge fact-checking culture was emerging, and they were just claiming things they didn't want to be true were false, even they're completely true. Things that sound unbelievable, like there was mass rapes going on at a New Year's Eve in Cologne, Germany. And we were reporting on Breitbart. We were right on the money, and they kept telling us we were wrong about stuff and like trying to find nitpicks that maybe we didn't get right. And they're in the breaking news of it all. And we'd gotten it right, and we were just getting policed ruthlessly because we were trying to report on some of the bad guys. January 20th is the day, and Washington, D.C. is the place. That's when and where Donald Trump will be inaugurated as the 47th president of the United States. He gets a whole new inauguration. It was already 45th. Now it'll be 47. And we want to send you there. You can win a once-in-a-lifetime VIP experience to attend the inauguration in Washington, D.C. It includes airfare for you and a guest to Washington, a 3-night stay in our nation's capital, tickets for the presidential inauguration, and much more. Don't miss this historic opportunity to celebrate the greatness, the history, the excitement of a presidential inauguration. To enter, you see the link in the show notes for this episode, or go to SalemPodcastNetwork.com/Trump. Guys, I've said this, that this is the marquee event on anyone's social calendar for the year, really for the decade for most people. And you get a chance to go. I don't see why you wouldn't give it a shot. Salem Podcast Network/Trump. All you got to do, and you'll get your name on the list. And let's see if you can win. I hope you do. Man. All right. It was going to be an interesting year. I'll tell you that. So much to do. I set aside some clips of Jimmy Carter's malaise speech. I want to play that. Let's save that just in case I need some extra content. It's important to hear some of this stuff. It's just we want America to be spirited. One reason why I'm more interested in a guy like a Newsom than someone like a Kamala Harris. One of the more reasons why I'm more interested in a Biden or an Obama even than a Harris. Is I don't really know what Harris does. Some of these people feel like they're really living their best life. And Newsom talks like, and Obama talks like America's suffering. But then he goes out and he lives his best life. Guy's eating the French laundry, locking down people, and he's going out there. He's completely amoral, solipsistic, narcissistic. But you got to pay attention for we tend to gravitate towards people who have a vibrancy. That's what we want. And that's what Carter didn't represent. So more on that when I get back to it, but I want to read some email. I got some good ones. Strong reactions to yesterday's episode where I break down the H-1B issue, maybe some of the most engagement I've seen so far since doing the show. So thank you for that. Here is a email from Carolyn McNulty. Hi, Alex. There's no way I can listen to every episode of every podcast I've subscribed to, but there are some I always listen to. Yours has become one of those. Thank you. I enjoy hearing about your kids and your cooking adventures, as well as your take on current events. I love the order of that because this is what I find, is that I get more email on kids and cooking than I get on current events. So one of my New Year's resolutions, I will say, is to golf more. So maybe we'll have some more golf content next year. That's going to be super relatable to those of you in the audience who just want the news. All right. She goes on. Today, I had planned a fan email with the above comment. Now, partway through the December 30th episode, I find I somewhat disagree with your response to Vivek Ramaswamy's more or less comments. I'm a retired elementary school teacher. The trend before COVID was a slow slide in academic achievement. During COVID, the rate of the slide increased. Afterward, it was hard to get most students to focus long enough to learn a math concept, write a coherent paragraph, or read nonfiction. Families who'd prioritize academics and attendance didn't anymore. California's policies are on just about everything, and the change in my students made me decide to retire early and move out of the state. Okay, so let me comment on this. This is a great point, but this actually helps my point. If the system failed and your child made it out of the system and got their STEM degree and took on a boatload of loans, then they should not lose out on a job because someone from overseas wants to do the same job for 10% less. That's my point. The point is, if we want to have a culture of excellence, it starts in the classroom, the reinvigorating our school system, probably ending the Department of Education, having a voucher program, ending these university slush funds where they have these huge endowments so they can just make money. It just becomes a hedge fund, literally, not just a slush fund, a hedge fund. That's the system that's broken that we need to repair. So of course we're on a slow slide of academic achievement, but it doesn't mean that other countries are doing that much better. Doesn't mean other countries are that much more educated. The saying that it was hard to get students focused on a math concept or a coherent paragraph. What's the main hindrance to that? I'll hold it up right now. It's one of these guys. That's the problem. I'm holding up a smartphone for those of you not watching. Is the apps on it. It's what high tech did to us. It's these exact people that we need these H-1Bs to create these technologies that get us addicted. And then we fall asleep. We go into a stupor. We get what I call scroliosis. We can't stop scrolling. All of that was as STEM engineers created all that stuff for us. So I think this makes my point. Very well written email, though, Carolyn. She continues, I agree with your belief in balanced interests, but it's more and more rare. I don't think that Ramaswamy wanted children to only study engineering. I think he wants American families to prioritize education again. I think he wants American workers to show up on time and work hard. Too many don't. I don't know. I live in an environment where it's highly competitive. Everyone is trying to compete. It's all public schools. No one goes to private schools in my neighborhood. They all use the public schools, and they all compete. So I'm not saying that's everywhere, and I'm just not saying that I don't feel like this is a new concept that's going to be fixed by importing immigrant workers. All right, Joanna and Charlotte. Hi, Alex. Your breakdown of Vivek's tweet was fire, fire, fire emoji. I got a lot of fire emojis. Someone sent me a gas station emoji, like a gas pump. When I read the tweet myself, I was disappointed with the tone and underlying message. I'm hoping the pushback will help him better reassess the America First principles. As you stated, Americans can be successful with many endeavors at the same time. In regard to your Christmas with the kids, we too struggled with them en masse on Christmas Day. Yeah, I did complain about my children on Christmas Day. It was a lighthearted ribbing, but they deserved it. We packed in and arrived early for the children's mass. It was a mess, lots of pacing in the back, tears, and the painful back bend of a 1-year-old that is fighting being held. My beloved Duchess Marlowe Jr., who has been the easiest of the four for me, is doing some of the back bends, and that's a tough one. They arch their back in such a way that you could be a 6 foot tall, 180 pound man in great physical shape, and still you can barely control the 1-year-old. Anyway, she says, but as the saying goes, if a church isn't crying, it's dying. I love that. I noticed this, that when the church is too quiet, it makes you feel like, how old is everyone here? 1,000 years old? Here's to a little more Christmas cheer for the kids in 2025. Take care and Happy New Year, Joanna. Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you. You guys are great emailers. I love these notes. All right. This will be the last one for the year. Howdy from Southeast Texas. John Potter writes, I have a Carter story. Our polling place back then was one of the Texas prisons, and there was no early voting. We had to go to prison to vote on Tuesday. We always joke Texas encouraged inmates to crawl into your back floorboard to avoid overpopulating the prisons. When we went to vote for Reagan, we got to the prison around 5:30, and there was a very long line. The line moved slowly, and it was a long wait, probably around 6:15 or so. An election person walked down the line, informing everyone that they had run out of paper ballots and had sent a car into Houston for more. So I had an epiphany. I stepped out of line to my left and to my right and yelled, my wife and I are voting for Reagan. If 2 Carter voters will step out, the 4 of us can go home. Net 0 votes. I yelled it a couple of times, no takers, so I got back in line. We're still in line at 7. When the polls closed, they closed the line, but allowed us to continue and vote. We finally got home around 9:30, and the talking heads had already declared a landslide victory for Reagan. It was proud to vote for Reagan. He and Jefferson Davis are my 2 favorite presidents, and it was an unpleasant process. My wife and I fully embraced early voting. No more long lines. John Potter. Oh, beautiful. Beautiful. The reason why it's so funny to me is because this was a plot from Curb Your Enthusiasm. The show that Larry David, one of the Seinfeld creators, he created, was he got out of line when the line was too long, and he found another voter. He was voting Democrat. He found a Republican voter. They got out of line. They went home. And the Democrat lost by 1 vote. And he was at an election night party, and everyone figured out and got mad at him. Brilliant stuff. Brilliant plot to the show, and a brilliant plot to John Potter's life. Great way to end the year. Well, thanks everyone for being with me thus far. 2025 is going to be huge. My number one work goal will be doing this show and making it as big as humanly possible. Maybe one day the biggest show on podcasts. Who knows? I say, hey, we're ambitious here at the Alex Marlow Show. Thanks to our producer, Misty. All of you engaging with the content. 5-star reviews are very helpful. Leaving a comment on Apple. If you subscribe to Apple, go leave a comment over there. Most importantly, tell 10,000 friends and family members about the Alex Marlow Show. Email at aloha@alexmarlow.com. And we will talk to you in 2025. Happy New Year.